need a high-end designer or a lot of money to get a luxe look. Be your own interior designer.
This is Affordable Interior Design, the podcast.
Here's your host, Betsy Helmuth.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be back with you again this week. I'm extra excited because I'm joined by a very special, meaningful guest to me. Now, you all know him. You know him, you love him, but I know him differently. He's the reason, like the entire reason I'm an interior designer today. And so I'm excited to welcome Thom Filicia to the show. Of course, you know him as the original designer.
Hey, Betsy, how are you?
Hey, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, you don't need an introduction, but, you know, I'll let
You're very sweet. But first of all, I thank you. That's very sweet. But I want to tell everybody before you even introduce me that it's really great to see you. You have done so many amazing things. I know you're in your lake house right now, which is so cool. And you have your business is flourishing. And that's really awesome. And that, you know, you worked at Thom Filicia Incorporated years ago, and I know that you look fabulous, and you're doing all of these amazing things. And I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to catch up. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Yeah, I worked at your firm as an intern back in 2002, and I was design curious. You know, like I had seen it on TV. I was so impressed by everything that you did, but you know, when you're young, I was young, when you're young, I think I was 23 at that time, 22. I was just trying stuff out. Had no clue that this would be something I'd want to pursue as a career. Never went to interior design school. And you guys really took a chance on me. And the amount of access I got to look at projects, to see what you were doing, to peek behind the scenes was so inspiring. And I would say my life would have taken a different turn. I would not own a firm, have a podcast, have 2 books, everything like that without you guys saying yes.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's really generous and kind of you to say. Secondly, I really believe in internships. I really do. It's something that I was an intern when I was younger at Parish Hadley, and I was there for a summer, and then I went back another time in the winter, and then they hired me out of school. So the power of an internship is so important because it really helps young people sort of figure out what they want to do and what they want to do in that space. And, you know, it just gives you perspective on a situation that is generally theoretical to you at that point, you know, and it gives you hands-on experience. And I think it creates confidence in young people, especially when I had an intern with me the other day, and we were shopping for fabrics, and she picked a fabric out. And I was like, I really liked the fabric that she chose. And I made a big deal out of it because I wanted her to feel that, because I remember feeling that when I was her age, when somebody, you know, explained to me that was, you know, a good thing. And it gave me the confidence to then sort of have the ability to sort of choose things and show them to people that might be intimidating to that young person. And you know what I mean? So I really understand the power of the internship, and I really respect it. And I think that it's something that, you know, whenever I'm talking to young people, I always say, you know, please, whatever it is you're studying, you know, offer to work, not for free, but offer to work and basically do anything for someone who you think does something that you could potentially be interested in, because it's a great learning experience. And if you're really on it, like you were as an intern, you bring a lot of, you bring a lot to the table. It's amazing because, you know, we're always looking for someone to jump in and be hands-on. And we've hired a lot of young people, not then when you were there because we were a much smaller company, but now when we bring interns in, we kind of use it as a testing ground, you know, and it's like, if someone just kind of comes in and what can I do? How can I be helpful? What do you need me to do? We're like, we sign them up. like, for more than just internship, because that's really what we're looking for, is people that have the ability to kind of make it happen
Right.
and want.
And promote from the inside, seeing what people
Yeah.
are capable
Yeah.
of, seeing how they kind
Yeah.
of chemistry. But,
Yeah.
that was a little glimpse into my origin story. And today I want to get a glimpse into your origin story, because
Got it.
so many of the listeners are thinking about this as a career, or maybe even a second career, right? And so they're wondering, what does it feel like to want to be an interior designer? So when did you first realize that interior design might be your path? When was that sort of spark?
Well, so when I was about, I think when I was in elementary school, I was in 5th grade, and my school teacher, Mrs. Chamberlain, went away on vacation. And as all elementary school kids do, or at least did back in the day, I don't know if they do it anymore, but they're probably better behaved today. But we would tell the substitute teacher a list of things that we were allowed to do. Come and go at our leisure, go to the bathroom whenever we want, draw on our desks, all the stuff that we're really not supposed to be doing.
Right.
And of course they don't believe you, but so I was drawing on my desk for literally the entire week that Mrs. Chamberlain was gone. And I was drawing a house, and every day I would add on to it and keep adding and keep adding. And so when she returned on that following Monday or Tuesday, or whenever she got back, I obviously was, it was the entire desktop, like, was a house. And it just kept rambling and going and going. And it was really awesome. I wish I still had the photo of it today. It was really, really amazing, because it was kind of like an Escher meets like a traditional shingle style house almost. But anyways, so, and I was in 5th grade. So it's kind of amazing that it was even something that was in my brain, and I was putting it onto a surface. But so the teacher comes back, and obviously I'm in trouble, and I'm told the principal is going to come up and have a word with me, because after school, like, I had to stay after everyone went home, and I had to talk to the principal. And so Mr. Byer came up and said, Tom, this is not, you're not supposed to do this. This is like, really bad. This is like, defacing property and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I just, whatever. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did it. And they were like, no, you have to erase this and write like 1,000,000 times on the blackboard. I will not draw my desk. But before they did that, they took a picture of me next to it with the principal. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. There's something in here that's good, because they would never have me take a picture of me next to it with the principal, because they were like, damn, this is like, they were kind of like, this is a good thing,
Yeah.
but you can't say that, because it's,
Right.
I didn't do it on paper. So it had to be kind of, a bad thing. So anyway, so I kind of realized, I was like, wow, this is cool. And I could tell that they were like disappointed that I chose to draw on my desk, but kind of impressed with what I did. So it made it that much more kind of important to me. And I started drawing houses all the time. And then I started doing layouts, and my father was an engineer, and he taught me how to draft and gave me like drafting tools and a T-square and all that kind of stuff. And so I was kind of learning how to do all that. And then in 6th grade, there was a girl named Julie Banks and myself, and we both wanted to be architects at this point. And we started designing houses, and Mr. Byer would put them up, because we did them on paper, on the bulletin board in front of his office, and for everybody to see, because he thought they were. So it was like a really like, I was like the kid that failed every spelling bee, and like math was not my thing. So to be on the principal's bulletin board was something that was new to me, because I was never like the winner of the spelling bee or anything. So anyways, so this was like, I was like, it was like being on the front cover of the New York Times in elementary school, being on that bulletin board. So that's when I really started to realize I wanted to go into design and architecture, and I really specifically wanted to design homes. Well, that kind of led into a series of, just like, I went to an architect that lived in my neighborhood's office for the day. And then we had to research in like 7th grade about careers that we liked. So I researched all about how, architects and what they do, and you to get up in front of the class and explain what they do and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of lasted with me until right through college. I mean, right through high school. And I was in advanced art class. That's another thing that I was in 6th grade. I was then put into an advanced art class. And I kind of stayed in that space all through middle school and high school, where I was, I was taking, drawing classes and like in reduced art classes with a smaller group, and a little bit more advanced in terms of what they were asking us to do, and sort of building a portfolio for to go to college. And so that's how I found design. And I think that I was just always, my head was in that space. When I would go into rooms when I was a kid, I lived in a neighborhood where a lot of the houses were built turn of the century to the 1920s, maybe 1930s. So they were kind of like cool, interesting.
I love it.
And there were some sprinkled in modern houses too. And, I thought that everybody knew, like, oh my God, like your staircase, like I knew every detail. Like I knew where people had milk boxes built into their houses, or coal chutes, or where they had skylights, or where they had, just like any weird, like, you know what I mean? Like I just knew details, and I would say, oh, it's up near the, the whatever. And kids would be like, what? And then when I went to summer camp, we had Vespers at night, and I would literally tell kids in the dark to describe the front of their house, and I would tell them the floor plan, the layout of their house.
Oh my God.
So that's just where my brain was. Like
you were like a ghost hunter, psychic.
Yeah. So it was a little like, it's a little funny, that it's the way my brain works. I assumed everybody's brain worked that way. I kind of look at the world as a blueprint, like I see neighborhoods as a blueprint, as a plan, and so it's very hard for me to get lost. I go into a house and I can remember the layout almost to the point where I can draw it very, like, without measuring, and I'm pretty good at like getting the proportion and scale down. So it's just the way my brain has always worked. And I think I was lucky that I had a mom and a dad who were pretty supportive of like, kind of like, find what you love and kind of just like run with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were like, that's cool. Like, you're going to be an architect. They were like, that's great.
Where did it turn? Because all this stuff from the Vespers to the drawings, I'm like, so architecture, right?
Yeah.
How did that segue? Was it the math that made you switch over? Even though interior design has tons of math. I do math. Like,
well, I think it was just that at that age, I think in architect was kind of what, if I didn't understand the nuance between architecture and interior design, I just thought an architect, you know what I mean? Like designs everything in the house. You know what I mean? So I just saw that as like, you pick out the land, you design the house, you build the house, you make it look great on the inside. Or maybe I even thought that was just like the people did that, like that was their stuff. And so, no, but it was like, my first go-to was architect. And I think, probably because it was the most professional of the occupations at that time. I mean, it was 1975 or 76, or I don't know what year I was in. No, that would be like 1980, I guess. So yeah. So I mean, I just think in 1980, it was like, if a young boy said he liked designing houses, I think the first stop was architecture. And then and I think and it's probably still true today at some level, but I do think that architecture and design now are equally professional. I think back in the olden days, interior designers were kind of like self-proclaimed professionals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It wasn't as much of a professional industry. It was like, oh, this really beautiful woman who lives in our neighborhood, whose husband owns like a law firm, she decorates everybody's houses. And like, because she has, when she's not having lunch at the country club, that's what she does. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, fabulous. She knows everybody. She knows how to get stuff. She's got great style. That's what she does. I think that's kind of like who my mother used to help with like reupholstery and carpets and whatever, window treatments and curtains and things like that. So I think that's kind of how it worked back then, or certainly in, suburban environments, but I think there was a little bit of that sort of like, I don't know if it was a real profession yet. So I think kids were kind of geared towards go to school to be an architect. And if you decide you want to be a designer and focus on interior design, you can always do that, but get that degree. You know what I mean? And a lot of schools didn't really offer interior design. It was a pretty much a niche degree at that point. It was like, I remember looking at colleges and it was, complicated to find a school that I liked and had interior design. Because I didn't want to go to necessarily an art school.
Right.
And a lot of the schools that I thought were cool, like I wanted to go to Hobart and they didn't have interior design. Now they have an amazing interior design program, but they didn't have it back in the day. And I'm so glad I didn't go there because Syracuse University was such a better choice for me. However, it was definitely restricted in terms of finding schools that had a professional, like a program for interior design. It was like maybe they had an art program and that you could focus on and then go work for an interior designer, but it was still quite limited. So I think that's why. And, but I followed it. I was definitely, I followed that. I went and looked at schools, and the reason I went from architecture to interior design is when I went and looked at schools, I remember when I went to Syracuse University and I walked through the architecture department, I was like, this is so amazing. And I couldn't believe how cool it was. And then I talked to some of the architects and they said they never leave their studio. I said, are you in a fraternity? No, we never leave our studio. I was like, that sucks. I don't know if I can handle that, because I was all like ready planning on like what was my favorite bar and where I was going to hang out the most, and I had a fake ID. I was like already moving. So I was like, this is going to be a problem.
This is a social play.
Yeah. I was like, look, we got to come out of this education thing with a good social foundation as well as, some knowledge. But, I don't think it should be lopsided either way. It's called balance. And I use that in design every day. But I will say that when I went into the interiors department, I walked in and I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do, because it was architecture kind of mixed with sort of interiors. Yeah. And everyone that was in that space was like, they said they loved their program and it was so much fun. And everybody that was in it was like literally, it was like 18 women and one guy. And he was actually one guy who got kicked out of the architectural program. That was it.
He partied too much.
It was me and one guy that got kicked out of the architecture program, and like 18 girls. And it was just like, we were all pretty close, and it was like we were in it together. It was like the architecture school was like 300 kids, in like the freshman class, and the professor's goal were to like torture these people to the point where some of them just left, or they were trying to get rid of students.
Right.
The interior design program was like a nurturing, different environment. It was just like, they didn't want to lose you, and they wanted you to be there, and they wanted to guide you through the process, and they wanted you to be happy. And so it was just like, I really enjoyed my education. Like I really enjoyed it. Like I've actually gone back as a visiting professor. I received an award from my school called the Ahrens Award. So I'm really connected to the school that I went to. I feel like it's exactly where I needed to go at that time, because it had everything that I wanted. It was the art school was amazing. The design school was amazing. My program was fabulous. And I was in a university, so I was able to have friends that were studying business and dance and theater and graphic design and architecture, economics, political science. I was in a fraternity, which was really important to me back then. And now I look at it and go, why was that so important? But I think a lot of that was great because so many of my clients are people that were in the Greek system, or like people that were in the Greek system. So being able to really like communicate and have like a lot in common with that demographic is really important, you know? And so for me, I've always gotten as like, you know, someone that works in television and was on, you know, doing all that kind of stuff. I was always told like, you remind us of our best friend who's gay or our best friend who came out or, you know, so that was always kind of where I landed. And I think a lot of that was because I was that gay guy that was like, you know, in a fraternity and going to sorority events and, you know, just kind of a part of that. And at the same time in the art school, going to off-campus parties and like, you know, everyone's painting the walls and getting drunk and being, you know, artists. And so having juxtaposition of both of those things and feeling sort of comfortable and, you know, feeling like I belonged in both naturally. And that was great because it's allowed me to navigate many different, you know, types of environments, I think.
Of course, yeah, because you kind of were accepted, felt at home, felt organically aligned with both types of people.
Mhm.
But you know, it sounds like from listening to your story that all the chips sort of fell in line, that it was a clear path for you with sort of no distraction. But once you started becoming a designer, once you started taking clients, what would you say was the most difficult or discouraging part? Because, you know, so many people I talk to want to be designers, they feel the pull, and then they have those first issues, those first projects.
Okay. It's such a great question. I have to tell you, nobody has ever asked me this question. Huh? So I love this question, and I have such a real answer for you. So I was working at Parrish Hadley as an intern, and then I was very lucky that David Kleinberg asked me to come back and do some work for him over the Christmas holiday. I was in California with my family, and then I was in New York, and then I went back up to Syracuse, and then went to school. So I worked with David in his office, helping organize stuff and doing things after my summer internship. And then when I went back to school, they invited me to, you know, come and work at the firm and help them with some projects they were working on, like a book and furniture and blah, 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 blah. So, and I was drafting for them, and I was helping out doing drafting in the architecture department, which was really awesome and amazing because learning the way that they do furniture plans and all of those details was really amazing. But the thing that really kind of, I don't know if you know, so I was working for the 1% of the 1%. Our clients were the Gettys, the Rockefellers, you know, the just recognizable American names like Getty Gas, the Gettys, you know, Babe Paley, you know, like, you know, he was a big mover and shaker in Hollywood. Like all of these people were like the list of clients on all of the drawings. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like insane, you know?
Yeah.
But we're working for the 1% of the 1%, kind of. And then I went and worked for Robert Metzger, and then it was kind of like the same thing, but a lot of like very well-known Jewish families in New York City and all over the country because, you know, that's kind of was his clientele. So it's sort of interesting. And then I worked for Jeffrey Bill Huber, and he was working for Givenchy and like fashion people and like people at like supermodels and stuff like that. So it was like each thing was so different, but everybody had full access and everybody was like, by industry standards, the 1% of the 1%, kind of, you know what I mean? Like Givenchy is like not waiting in line for a reservation in a restaurant, and, you know, and Naomi Campbell or whoever, these are the kind of people that all these companies, you know, were, you know, working with. And so my one thing was, I was just like, I just felt like I was a part of a generation where design was starting to be like something that was for everybody. Target was a thing that was kind of happening. There were things like, you know, Crate and Barrel became like a big kind of thing where their products started getting like surprisingly sophisticated and cool compared to what they used to be. They used to look like a crate and actually a barrel. And now they look like kind of like almost like Holly Hunt, you know, Holly Hunt. And so I was like, wow, this is the world is changing. Like design is not just for the 1% of the 1% anymore. And I have to say, I was discouraged that I went to school and I was really into design as a concept. And, when I studied Frank Lloyd Wright when he was doing homes that were for the people, or, for not for the super rich. And, Volkswagen was a car that I thought was so interesting because it was like a car for the people, but it was like thoughtful and smart. And so it was the car that I had in college. I had a Jetta at this time. And so I was like, wow, I'm like, so going into the real world, I was like, I felt like interior design was a little behind the times in terms of being designed for everybody. It was definitely designed for the 1% of the 1%, or certainly the 1%.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Or aspirationally the 1%. But there was nobody, it was not for everybody. And the design community was not really open. They were like, Crate and Barrel, I would never, you know what I mean? And these are gay men that live in studio apartments that work at a design firm. And they're like, I would never. And I'm like, really? I think it looks amazing. Like, why would you never? Like, you could totally mix that in. It would look amazing. Like, it was just more about, like, it became more about the pretension and sort of the it was an old school pretentious business. Yeah. And I was bummed out that the career path that I chose was not, I don't know, that it didn't feel fair, and it didn't feel up to date, and it didn't feel cool. And that's what I was kind of bummed out about. And I saw people like Jeffrey Bill Huber and Arrow Studios and other people doing things that I was like, these guys are cool. They're mixing like mid-century like garbage that they would fix up, and they'd find a garbage can and they would be like, it's Dunbar, and they'd paint it and fix it up and they'd sell it for a lot of money and mix it with other things that were like very qualified and we all knew what they were. But then they would also mix it with like modern stuff and contemporary stuff. And I was like, this is cool. Okay. And it felt more like it started to open up the idea that like the mix of high, medium, and low, but done in a stylish way, was just as like valuable as just really expensive things. And that was a big deal for me. And then I started watching TV shows like Design on a Dime, or there was one that was like where you would leave and your neighbors would decorate your house.
Trading spaces.
And they'd always do like some weird ass, like put grass on the wall because she loves her lawn. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing ever. But as much as I didn't love the shows, and I didn't, they were usually like an ex-model who couldn't model anymore was now like the host and knows nothing about design. And you know what I mean? And it was like, it wasn't really design driven. It was like, it was about design, but it was like not really real design. It was like, it was kind of gimmicky, kind of crappy design, but it was fun. And it was relevant, and it made people start to like design. And it also invited people into the design conversation that were never invited before, that were just like a young couple, living, in Chicago, watching this, where they're excited, because they're like just bought their first apartment and don't have a lot of money to spend. And so all of a sudden that demographic was invited into the interior design conversation. And so I was like, I think that's so cool. And that's why when Queer Eye became a possibility for me to be involved with, I was like, I'm going to do this, because I have people who are very wealthy asking me to decorate their houses like once every other week. I'd never have anybody asking me to work in a new medium that feels like the future of like design starting to become a little bit more of a conversation for everybody, not just for the 1%. And I was like, and I would like to be a part of that movement. And that was something that I was excited about. And it was the thing that disappointed me the most about the industry that I chose.
Well, and I think that evolution is still happening. I see, I have affordable interior design. So I love shopping at Target, IKEA, sales section. And certainly affordable has this huge range these days. And now things are available that were so exclusive before, only
Yeah,
to designers,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so I think that evolution is still happening because people definitely look down on me in the industry. I don't mark things up, I work a different way, and they're still holding on to that. My conversation with Thom was so exciting and so action-packed that we had to divide this episode into two. So check in again next week where you will find part 2 of my conversation with Thom Filicia. A big thank you to Aton and the Embassy who wrote our theme song. A shout out to Catherine Heller who owns the podcast shop and is our editor extraordinaire. We also want to thank Ginny Sunasan and her team at the Savvy Podcast Agency for their help with our social, our YouTube channel, and so much more. We also want to thank Uploft, which is our parent company who supports this podcast. And lastly, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for all your support.